So shall we begin, everyone? Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let me just bring up our slides here. Welcome, everyone. Oops. Let's go back to the beginning. So welcome, everyone, to our first Ask Us Anything About Astropreneurship. So my name is Perry Lamb, and I'm with OASA, the Executive Vice Chair. In fact, many of those individuals today are also associated with OASA. So we welcome everyone to our first event. And today we'll be focusing on what? The metaverse. So to begin with, in the metaverse, our agenda is going to be the following. We're actually having the opening here. Then we're going to have our three guest speakers share a little bit, but also we're going to have a lot of open discussions and Q&A to engage everyone as such. So a little bit about OASA. What is OASA and who are we? OASA stands for the Orion Astropreneurship Space Academy that was launched in Hong Kong a little over a year ago. And we call ourselves OASA. And what's the purpose of OASA? As you can see here, it's really to help accelerate the development of young global leaders through specific programs and journeys that we design, and with a specific, what we call wicked challenge that we will face in the future in terms of the space economy. So in the future as such, OASA will provide a series of these monthly forums. So we're actually looking at the last Thursday of every month. So put that down on your calendar in terms of joining us for all the future sessions that we'll have. And with that as such, let me now begin by talking a little bit about astropreneurship. So what is the astropreneurship and what is the new space economy? Well, it's really the opportunity that we see in terms of creating awareness, some education, and also how to look at today's youth, whether it be the very young or those at university level, to explore career opportunities. The space economy is here today. And as you can appreciate, it's not only about space travel, as been become popular recently, but it's around us today in terms of big data. I mean, Hong Kong being one of the major financial centers, the timestamps on each financial transaction. Imagine if we didn't have that. 1 or 2 seconds off could mean millions in terms of financial gains or financial loss. So the reality is the new space economy is here today, and it's bounds around us. Another example of that could be the space in terms of smart cities that we have, or autonomous driving, which we have by the airport. So it's not only about space travel, but it's also about other opportunities as well. Now, at OASA, we have 3 missions. The first mission is what we call the space accelerators. And Hong Kong, with the event we just had a few months back, has actually launched now the building of CubeSats within the education system. We had over 20 schools compete, and they presented some excellent team efforts in terms of utilizing the CubeSats from both a technical STEM perspective, but equally important, a business perspective in terms of the entrepreneurship. Space readiness. As many of you may be aware that the Young Marco Polo program, in which we take corporates with some of the key challenges and support it with today's university and young professionals to come up with how to come up with solutions to meet those particular challenges. Also, establishing our new chapters within OASA throughout Hong Kong and globally as well. Now, the third one is why we're here today. It's about space pioneers and ambassadors, establishing a Moonbase on the metaverse. So that's the topic for today, is about the metaverse. With that as such, what I'd like to do now is just very briefly introduce our 3 panelists and speakers, and I'll also give them an opportunity to take a deeper dive and introduce themselves in a moment. Firstly, we have Eddie Cho. Eddie is known throughout Hong Kong and North Asia in terms of being the CTO of Blockchain 0101 Limited. Our second panelist is Francesca Lee, who's the founder of O2O2M Limited, also based in Hong Kong, but involved throughout Asia Pacific and Mauritius. And lastly, Christopher Lee, who's the co-founder and CEO of Meta-Olympics. Each of you will be sharing today with the audience some of the key insights, some of the key experiences and thoughts, but also at the same time, we're going to welcome the audience to share from your perspective as well. So think of this as an informal gathering in which we all have a voice, we all have a dialogue to contribute in terms of today's session. So with that as such, what I'd like to do is begin with the following. Let's just get a sense of how well or how comfortable or how knowledgeable are we in terms of the metaverse. And what I'm going to do is call upon Cherry, who's our producer for today, to actually launch a poll. And I want everyone just to click on there how you feel from a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of our comfort level of the metaverse. Are we an expert at 5? Or are we, like me, number 1, no idea? So please cast your votes. How do you feel your comfort level is in understanding? All right, the votes are slowly coming in. We'll spend a couple more seconds and let everyone vote, and then we'll share that just to give us a benchmark of where we are. All right, so let's close the polls in 3, 2, 1 seconds. So now, Cherry, can you share the results from everyone? Share the results with everyone. So if I could, I'm going to call upon Mahmood. If you look at the results here, what does that say to you in terms of the results of the respondents today, this group here?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. The basic results basically say that most of us are not entirely aware of the metaverse. And hopefully after this session, we can be more aware and more knowledgeable about it.
Yes, thank you for that, Mahmood. Absolutely. So if you look at the group today who's participating, I would say we're quite young in terms of understanding about the metaverse. And also at the same time, there's a great opportunity to learn more, ideally through the start of this session and continuous awareness and exposure as such. So with that, Cherry, thanks for sharing that first poll question. And then we could stop sharing now. All right. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce our first panelist for today. And I'd like to call upon Mr. Eddie Cho. So Eddie, the stage is yours. Maybe start off first with an introduction of yourself, a little bit deeper dive, and then some of your thoughts and insights in terms of today's session of the metaverse. Eddie, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eddie. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and right now I'm a blockchain educator. I know something about the metaverse, so I'm trying to share today with you. I actually prepare a few slides. So I'm going to talk about what my understanding of the metaverse is and why technology such as blockchain is so important. Let me share my screen. Let me know, can everyone see my screen? Can someone put a hand up, see my screen? Yeah, okay, good. So, okay, what's metaverse? I'll go on the basics. For my understanding, what's a metaverse? Basically, think about it's like a virtual Legoland. For those who've been to Legoland and see, you got those Miniland, Legoland. You can have a Legoland in Windsor, UK. You also can have a California in USA. But the point to notice, can you see the two identical Eiffel Tower? That means you can build something on one metaverse, but coexist on another metaverse, if you allow me to explain that way, and put that physical space into the digital world. You can put it in a Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PS5, or even Windows games. So the one of the best examples right now is Sandbox, the metaverse, which I believe one of our guests, Christopher, will explain to you later. Think about the Sandbox is like a Minecraft evolution, like an evolution of Minecraft. But the question is, how do we get there? How do you get from suddenly go into this universe? So to understand that, I'm going to talk about the Web3, how the development is. So as technology drive and innovations, first of all, the old days, we have the Web1, which is called the information economy, where everyone can only download, read informations, right? And then it started evolving to the platform economy, when the internet is faster, you're allowed to upload create your content, video, pictures, etc. for sharing. And the reading, the download and upload, we call the platform economy. We rely on certain platform like Facebook, Google, whatever, as a platform. And as the technology further evolves, like 5G, satellite, fiber optics, you have now called a decentralized economy. People are able to interact with each other peer-to-peer directly. And we call this the Web3 using the blockchain technology. So blockchain technology is very important in that sense. So after you have blockchain technology, you have the decentralized application, you have tokenization, and you start into playing literally like a game into the metaverse. And all the AI, VR are all just part of the plugins to the metaverse. And then also you have a timeline, you can go right now presence, beyond, or even further, on blockchain. But to understand that, you have to understand a little bit more about the important aspect of decentralization. We are very familiar with traditional centralized architect, where you have like a company, everyone, we are just a user, right? So it doesn't matter, they have full control over you. But in the decentralized Web3 sense, every user will become an owner of the system. That means you have a higher control. You're no longer a user, right? If you forgot your password, you're done, right? So you're more responsibilities, way more than before. So it's very important to understand if you need to interact with the decentralized metaverse or even a blockchain, the individual private key is very important. That is something very much important. And then something like the metaverse is a common user interface we use to interact with different blockchains. You see Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, BSC chain. These are all different blockchains happening around the world. It's like, think about it, it's like a different database running around. On top, you can build anything. And using the same key, you are able to connect with them. So right now, you have a lot of decentralized metaverse emerges. The most popular one being the Sandbox. On the left, you can see. Very popular, gaining a lot of traction. These are very decentralized. Everyone is a participator as well as an owner of a piece of land or can participate. They can social, interact. They create their own identity, create their own asset, gaming, work, everything on the Sandbox platform. But you also have another very popular called Decentraland, which is very similar in that sense. So these are two separate metaverse. And not just that, you have the Ape, you have the Theta, you have Access, Infinity. So you've got all this kind of new decentralized metaverse emerging. Of course, our Facebook, we've been very familiar with, right? They come up with Meta. But in fact, something like Facebook, Roblox, Minecraft, they are really a centralized metaverse. So the difference between the two is the decentralized metaverse, it will remain there as long as the blockchain remains. It will stay there forever, right? So you can see a lot of people why they're more incentivized to go into a decentralized metaverse, because whatever they build, they have full control, and then they would last. Whatever they've created will last on the metaverse platform. Unlike you don't know what happened the next day, maybe the Facebook will turn down, the shut down, or the server goes down. Anything can be controlled. So right now, if you ask me, the ratio is more decentralized, emerging very fast, and the centralized one are trying to catch up. finally, my 5 minutes is up. Finally, yes, anything is possible. You can have this, you can build anything on top of any platform, such as the Moonland, the Sandbox, and create a Moonbase. So together we can build a future. I would say anything is possible. Just use your imagination, whether you want to involve in service, want to involve in gaming or interactions, the platform out there for you to build. So just conclude my 5 minute sharing of my short presentation. So I'll stop my screen now.
All right, thanks very much. It's very interesting there, Eddie. In fact, we have a question from Artem. Artem Kia, could you turn on a camera and microphone and ask your question, or would you like for me to share your question that's on the chat? All right, Eddie, the question for Artem is the following. Wow, we have a lot of questions here. To what extent, Eddie, can the metaverse replace real life in our lives? Will real life space exploration still matter anymore if we can just space travel in a metaverse? Well, that's a very big question there for you, Eddie.
Actually, to honest answer you, I don't know. The equilibrium, the word balance is keep on shifting as more advanced technology, better UI, better gaming experience, everything is changing. So it's more like you self-balance yourself and you're self-aware, start engaging into what, you can't really balance between how many hours you spend on real life, how many hours you spend on metaverse. The old days I was wrong. I used to call my son, hey, you gaming too much. You spend too much on gaming. This is addiction, But now I realize they're actually exploring new worlds, exploring new opportunities, interact with different societies. So this is the new generation are facing, So how to strike a balance, very hard. It will keep on evolving. So yeah, that's what my 2 cents.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Eddie. I'm curious. It seems like the children are the early adapters in the metaverse, right? The younger students seem the ones who've embraced it the soonest. Any thoughts there in terms of why it's appealed so much to younger students versus, dinosaurs like me? What's the hook there, do you think, Eddie?
Well, I would say different generations. I was born without internet, okay? My dad used to think about crocodile shoes, gold bar, diamonds are valuables. But the value of perception will really change. The young generation, my son, which is on the watching my show today, Jasper, they're born in the digital age. They're born even before you even have the bank accounts. They're already interacting with different friends through the gaming, through work and things. So the idea of digital value or digital perception, they're much more easy for them to understand. So why I've been an educator, I want to educate them to understand what is the proper understanding of the digital space, what are the risks involved, how you get yourself, before you get into any trouble, scams, or security risks, etc. So yeah, the new generation really need to understand what they're facing, because it's a whole new ballgame.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks for that, Eddie. Now we have another question here. Mahmoud, would you like to turn on your mic and ask your question to Eddie? That's a great question.
Hi, so I wanted to ask the question about the decentralization of, you can say, different metaverses. For example, you told about how different metaverses are emerging, right? So some are decentralized, some are not. And like, for example, if Facebook makes their own metaverse, will they be controlling it or not? Because like if they make it, they would want to control it, right? So it wouldn't be decentralized at all. It would be kind of centralized, like some kind of control.
Okay, if you allow me to say, it's just like people ask me, how do I can regulate metaverse? Well, decentralization itself is organic by nature and principled by design. So it's really hard to regulate something that's decentralized. It's built in the system. Nobody control everything. So if you look at it, Facebook, it is really like a swimming pool, right? Where they have guards, you have to behave, swim, you know, you can properly dress, you don't push people around, and you're in a concealed environment. If you be naughty, Facebook will kick you out, right? That's a centralized. But decentralized is very like you're swimming on the open sea, okay? You're swimming on open sea. You can scream, you can be naked, you can do silly things. But if you ever get into trouble, no one can save you, right? So in a decentralized world, you have to always be sensible, you know, be aware what's happening. Self-discipline, control is very important. Because like I said, everything just started right now, you know, decentralized technology just begins. So we are so familiar with the traditional centralized mindset. So really have to switch our mind, you know, to think and react the world differently.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Eddie. Okay, last question. I see here on the chat, Gulam, could you please ask Eddie your question about time travel?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Eddie. That was super interesting. Here I saw on the page that where you showed the evolution of web from Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. You mentioned time travel at the last bottom of Web 3, and I'm quite interested to know your point of view about mentioning time travel, whether it would be virtual time travel or digital time travel, or if you really believe that time travel or Web 3 and blockchain would really enable time travel in real life.
Wow, what a great question.
Oh, okay, I'll go a bit crazy here. Allow me. You know, right now a lot of metaverse are present, right? Right now, how you interact with people playing game at this very moment, right? And we utilize the blockchain technology because they're immutable. As long as the blockchain exists, all the data will remains, right? No one can corrupt it, right? So we're thinking about adding a little bit new element like AI onto it, right? Can I create myself, right? That have certain ability to walk, just maybe Monday morning, every morning I drink tea, morning and chat, say hi to everybody, create myself in an AI sense, and even create immortality. So I can create, even after I die, my so-called my program, you keep on running, right? So you can really play around the timeline, right?
I see.
My grandson, right? Interact with my granddad. Oh, my granddad used to have the double cappuccino every morning at 10 o'clock, right? So this is all happened, and he liked to, you know, do this and that to learn what his previous generation do. So that's what I mean by time travel. Of course, if you can build a history of, let's say the Victorian times or even the old Chinese Qing dynasty, right, into the metaverse, you can actually immerse yourself, going back time, go back to see how the world, you know, broke out in that from that day. At least you can feel, wow, you know, this is World War I, World War II, all this kind of thing. So I think the metaverse has got so much potential in the sense of you can create database simulation of previous history, and also create yourself or anyone immortality, you know, going forward. So yeah, that's so
super nice.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much there, Eddie, for sharing. So in a metaverse, right, the way we acknowledge someone with great ideas, we go like this. It's mind-blowing. So let's give Eddie a mind-blowing acknowledgement. Thank you, Eddie. So I'd like to call upon our next panelist and speaker, the founder of O2O2, Francesca Lee. Could you please share with us a little bit about you and your company, Francesca, and your insights in terms of the metaverse? Francesca, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Perry. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. I'm Francesca Lee, entrepreneur and marketer based in Hong Kong. I run a marketing consultancy and aim to grow with brands and corporates. And O2O2M Limited is an extension to the traditional marketing consultancy because it tackles, it helps create solutions and integrated marketing solutions for Web3 projects. In order to help them enhance the branding and advertising strategies, we often need to think out of the box. And thanks to OASA, I've gained some astropreneurship spirit, we learn to think even out of the earth, think out of space. So I'm happy to be here today and share about my thoughts about the metaverse from a business and marketing consultant's perspective. I remember it was just not long ago when I was still a primary school student, we were learning what the internet is all about. I had the luxury of having a computer at home at that time because my dad was in computer science and he was very tech savvy at that time. But even he was tech savvy at that time, it had to take about like 5 minutes of beep, beep, beep to even connect to the internet, like a 56K network in order to go on the internet. And after that, we even had to take another 5 minutes to load the web page as compared to 1 second of connections to the Wi-Fi now. I mean, trust me, it was very slow. In just about 20 years of time, the world has changed so much because of the development of the internet. It enhances not only connections among people, connections between people and the world, but also creates more opportunities for businesses and all types of innovations. So now we are entering the next stage of internet. That's why it's called Web 3.0. Because of the blockchain technology, which Eddie has explained very well earlier. I mean, the potential of what Web3 can bring to the world is huge if we make good use of this space and technology. The impact it can bring to the world also depends on our ambition and creativity. After all, it requires us humans to create, unlock, and activate what we want to do with it. It can start to literally bring the world to a different level by building metaverses, bringing reality to virtual. Computer or online gaming is not anything new, but being able to add gamification to what's happening in reality is something rather new and interesting. I mean, executing this gamified reality in the virtual space, imagine that. Linking it to reality. That's how I see what metaverse is. So some say the metaverse is a 3D model of the traditional internet. Some say it's a world where you can live a digital life. So at this point, let's do a poll. Let's say if you lived a digital life, would you create an avatar that's similar to or very different from your true self? Cherry, I need your help in activating the poll. Thank you. So imagine if you lived in the metaverse, in a virtual space, would you create an avatar that looks exactly like yourself, walks like yourself, wearing the most fashionable icon that you would buy in real life? Or would you create something that's very different from your true self? Would it be something very like a cartoon guy, or or as what Eddie just said, like naked swimming in the sea? Let's start the poll.
Yeah, it's begun.
All right, interesting. Okay, I think we can end the poll. Can everyone see the result already?
Yes.
Perfect. So apparently, well, 70% participated and 2/3 would show their true self. I'm kind of surprised.
I wouldn't.
Actually, I would, if I were to live a digital life, I would use a very similar avatar because I really want to, be myself and interact, just basically be myself, but interacting in a different space. That's just me. But it's interesting to see the majority, 2/3 of it also would do what I would. And then maybe 1/3 would be showing a very different self. Interesting.
Right. So Frank,
So basically, yes.
question based
Sorry?
upon that, because I think, one of the values
Yeah.
of this question here is that, we could take on different personas. We could take on different identities. We can explore different options as such. And so maybe I'm in a majority, but I would be different in terms of my true self in this particular case.
Sorry, what was your question? I may have missed.
A comment, Francesca, that I would be different.
Oh,
Would be different
I
because
see.
I'd like to take on an alias or maybe have a different character or persona. To explore.
That's interesting. Actually, you know what? That's the same with current social media like Facebook or Instagram. You don't have to show your true self, even though you're showing your true face, maybe on Instagram or social media, showing pictures of yourself, but you may not be showing what's actually genuine from inside, right? You could be showing a lifestyle that's different from your real lifestyle. So I think it's very similar in that sense. Anyway, let me continue. So the metaverse is basically a virtual world that can be linked to the reality. For example, Korea has announced that it will replicate one of the cities in the metaverse. Citizens can basically line up in the virtual hospital or even order their fast food there. There can be virtual events and happenings inside the metaverse, but it's still virtual. So for example, if you get sick and line up in the hospital, you cannot yet be healed by going to a virtual hospital, I assume. Or if you're hungry, you can't really eat virtual food. So it's only an experience to some extent, as far as I know. What the metaverse can do in this case is basically add value to the offline and online businesses and give you a unique experience that you may not be able to experience in a physical location or even current web pages or apps. How cool is that? As an entrepreneur and marketer based in Hong Kong, I personally believe that the Web3 and what we built on the metaverses can add a lot of value to current local businesses. We all know doing businesses in Hong Kong can be quite challenging. Rental is expensive as compared to many places around the world. It's a competitive place. It's a very fast-paced environment. And for many people, we need to keep hustling to survive. We need to meet people in person, network, build relationships, etc. I strongly believe in O2O2M, and that's how we named the company. That's offline to online to metaverse. I think we've heard of O2O for a while, that's offline to online. And that's how e-commerce was born. The metaverse is a space that allows more interactions. And if people and businesses can strategically plan the O2O2M strategies for their businesses, it may help increase revenue streams, drive traffic from more sources, and probably lower risk of costs occurred from unexpected events such as the pandemic, and eventually help increase the chances of sustaining their businesses. Since the pandemic, doing business is even more difficult than ever, but thanks to the internet and the birth of metaverse and all that, we get to connect even when we cannot meet in person. And by going online, businesses have the options to sell without physical locations and through in-person and even in-person experiences or services. Consumers can still shop till they drop online. Now, I believe the metaverses will bring e-commerce to a whole new level, a whole new experience. Like in OASA's case, we could even build a Moonbase in the metaverse. And to do that, instead of the support of, say, NASA or a huge organization similar to that, all we need is some open-minded, creative, and ambitious entrepreneurs to make that happen. So I encourage all of you to be open-minded and explore the positive values and fun experiences that the metaverses can bring to the world, because the metaverse is what you would build, I would say. Thank you. Oh, Perry, you're muted.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm going to say that I see on the chat line we have a number of questions for you. So I'd like to call upon Ghislaine again. If you could ask your question to Francesca, and then afterwards followed by Justin.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you, Francesca. That was quite insightful.
Thanks, Guillaume.
Now I have a question for you, and I guess for everyone as well, is like, when would you expect businesses to start advertising on the metaverse? And mostly, when do you think businesses will see metaverse as a new global market?
I would say they have already started. I mean, some of them, not all of them. It takes time, just like when it was the previous era of web, people needed time to, for example, build a website, build an app, to do e-commerce. Same as the metaverse, it takes time to build the technical part of it, and also takes time to design it, right? So I think actually many brands are already doing something, building their own metaverses or joining existing metaverses. So I think it's happening already. It would just take time for the audiences or the consumers to join, because it takes time for the metaverses to build their own communities, which in this case, for businesses, it takes time to build their consumer base and to actually learn how to engage in these new virtual spaces or new platforms. So I think it's already starting. For example, there are already spaces like the Sandbox, the Centraland, or virtual event spaces where people are already able to engage and to do businesses on. So I think it has already started, and it will just be the future of sales and advertising for businesses. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. And then Justin has one quick old school question for you, Justin.
Yes, because I'm old. Yes. How does metaverse impact customer experience? Because it's very different, and maybe possibly a disruption. And then, which industry would be benefited the most, in your opinion? Thank you. Yeah.
Right. I think it will impact consumer experience in a way that the experience almost has no boundaries virtually. As I mentioned earlier, I think gamification is a big part. Gaming is not anything new, but how to apply gamification to the specific business could be a very creative thing to do. So it depends on the creativity of the designer of the metaverse and the operations team of the business. I think it all depends on the creativity. And as to which industry will be benefited the most, I think almost all industries can enter the metaverse, because the metaverse is almost like the actual current reality moved to a virtual space, just like what Korea has done with their city, right? They're replicating the whole city onto the metaverse. So they can even build the same roads, the same buildings, the same space, or even one-to-one sizes, right? And operating on the metaverse, and even lining up to the hospital is insane. You can have the actual doctor. For example, if you go to Dr. Lee in some hospital, and he's actually sitting in his room in the virtual hospital waiting for patients. So imagine what you see in reality, you can see on the metaverse. But what I'm saying is only to a certain extent, because again, you cannot be doing a surgery in a virtual hospital, right? But you can at least line up and save the time from waiting physically at the hospital. You could order fast food, or maybe you can exchange. You can have all sorts of loyalty program attached to these retail businesses, and basically, depending on how creative you can be, you could create a metaverse that's exactly the same as the reality, or even more interactive and more gamified, I would say.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
The last comment from Wong Ching Young, and then we'll go on to Christopher. So, Ching Young, would you like to state your comment here that you put on chat?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, yes, thanks.
Yeah, I think the metaverse is quite exclusive to the rich people, since many of the poor may not have the access to explore the virtual reality or the metaverse that most city dwellers created. Yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective. I think that's what the media has done to make you have this perspective. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's exclusive for the rich, and I think there's no, I don't think the metaverse excludes anyone, rich or poor, no matter where you are, who you are, you could join the metaverse. And I think especially the media has exaggerated or elaborated a lot on, for example, the NFT tradings, big numbers in transactions, etc. And maybe that gave quite a wrong impression on that. This is just for the rich people. The actual metaverse could even be what I just said. For example, if it could really replicate the whole city, if you don't have money in a city, what would you do? I would go take a stroll in a park. That's what exactly you can do in the metaverse. You could take a stroll in a park and it doesn't cost anything. If I wanted to see some art, I could go to an art gallery, and some galleries don't charge, right? So I mean, there are many things that you could do on the metaverse, and it's not necessarily excuse me, it's not necessarily limited to trading, to businesses. It could, there could be entertainment, there could be information, there could be many other different things that the metaverse can provide that would not be costly. And of course, at some point you might need devices to get access to these metaverses. It could be maybe VR glasses, it could be just a smartphone, or it could be a computer, right? But I think in this, I mean, nowadays, most people already have a smartphone. So I think that's the basic thing that you need to get access to metaverse. And I don't think the metaverse excludes anyone from anywhere. Yes.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Let's thank Francesca. A Metaverse Way.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Now, our third panelist for this evening is Christopher Lee, who's a co-founder of Metalympics. Christopher, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Perry. Hi, guys. My name is Christopher Lee. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Metalympics, and today I mostly want to talk about my passion in the Sandbox. So before I go into what the Sandbox is, to just briefly talk about myself, I am still an active undergraduate student in the University of Hong Kong. By the way, I'm from South Korea. I major in information systems and computer science. I also minor in science entrepreneurship. And apart from the studies I do in the university, I also serve many different positions in multiple organizations to nurture myself to become an even more competent entrepreneur. So what Metalympics? Metalympics is the company that I co-founded earlier this year. It's an official metaverse agency on the Sandbox metaverse. And then our major goal is to help brands and companies, our partners and clients, to effectively bring their identity into the Sandbox by providing some multiple services like building the experiences and providing some marketing solutions. So like just how Guillaume asks the question, like if there are a lot of companies that want to build experiences on the metaverse or are already doing it, there are actually a lot of them. That if you just get into the map of the Sandbox, then you can see a lot of companies' logos out there that has spent hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of dollars to buy huge land plots and then also pay those agencies to make their experiences. And then just not on the Sandbox, and then also we have the Decentraland, and then also not just like blockchain-based metaverses like Roblox. We can see a lot of companies that try to take advantage of their capitals to spend on the metaverse experiences to get some early exposures. And then also at the same time that we are the leading esports organizer on the Sandbox. So we've been building the speedrun competitions and have run more than 20,000 Sand tokens as a prize pools. So that's about it for my company. And now I want to take a deep dive into what the Sandbox is. So as Eddie already kind of introduced what the Sandbox is an open metaverse based on the blockchain. So thanks to the blockchain technology, we have NFTs, where we can claim the full legal ownerships of what we have in the virtual experience. And also the creators that want to contribute to the metaverse can create content and then also monetize all those activities in terms of the Sand tokens and even more. If you can look at the map of the Sandbox, currently we have a scarce quantity of the land, having slightly more than 166,000 land plots, and then all of them are individual NFTs that you can find on the marketplace or on the OpenSea. And currently, more than 70% are already released through the public sales. And you can see over the next few years that 100% will be released and the true transaction will happen in the secondary market. So now that everyone will be really interested in what you can really do with the Sandbox metaverse particularly. So first of all, as a builder, you can build a lot of experiences based on the functionalities that is provided by one of the softwares provided by the Sandbox called the Game Maker. So the Game Maker allows you to make experiences without any coding. It can be multiplayer and single player. And you can make experiences as you prefer, like social hub, NFT gallery, just like building a museum. And then also, just like a game, that you can make a lot of gamified experiences like fighting adventures, RPGs, and parkour obstacles, which we are really good at. And also at the same time, there were really a lot of creative players and creators that made something even out of the functionalities of the Game Maker by finding some loopholes over there. So as a content creator, really just there are a lot of different ways to contribute to the metaverse. And then also at the same time, by owning the land plot, you can monetize your experience and then really just invite your friends over and then have a virtual party. And also, there are a lot of companies, as I mentioned, who want to get into the Sandbox metaverse. And I have prepared several videos that can show you what are some companies, especially in Hong Kong, that are trying to bring some solutions. And one of them is a Standard Chartered. So Standard Chartered has utilized this experience by building an experience on their land through one of the metaverse agencies in Hong Kong. And then as you can see in the video, things are voxelized. A voxel means 3 pixels. People can make their experiences NPC characters, buildings and assets. And then what Standard Charters want to do can be translated into their exposures, their branding and marketing, but we will have to see once the Sandbox officially launches and when the players actually can get into their land, that we will actually see the intention of the SC Ventures. Another one I want to show you was the South China Morning Post. This one was built slightly earlier than the SC Ventures I just showed you, and then it was actually a part of the official alpha season 2 that we had back in March. So Currently, the sandbox is in alpha. It means that it's not officially launched, but instead, they periodically hold something called an alpha season. Through the alpha season, you were able to claim those sand tokens by playing under the play to earn system. And this was one of my favorite experiences, having the virtual being of the Star Ferry of Hong Kong, that I was able to interact with the NPC characters and then get to know the history of the Star Ferry. So there are a lot of use cases of the Sandbox metaverse that is shown by different projects already. And now that I want to really explain how you can join into the Sandbox metaverse in different roles. One of them is a creator. As I mentioned earlier, there was a software called the Game Maker, where you can build games and experiences without any coding. Another one is called the VoxEdit. VoxEdit is just like a Photoshop, but in 3D. And also is similar to doing like Minecraft, where you build some assets and you can make them into the NFTs on the Sandbox marketplace. And those assets can also be imported into the Game Maker so that it can be used to make any games you prefer. And again, the biggest advantage is that you don't have to code anything. Just like what you can see in this visual, it's just like you can choose different behaviors of the assets, the different locations of it, and then just drag and drop is really easy for you to pick it up just within a few days. And also, if you go on the website, that there is a way for you to join the metaverse as a player. If you're not really capable of, or you're not interested in building anything, but instead you can be a player under the play to earn scheme, that you can also create your avatar that can represent your virtual identity and join this kind of experience and then interact with other multiplayers. And as far as I heard, there's an Alpha Season 3 coming up in July. So you can expect a lot of projects happening over the course of 2 months that you'll be able to join the metaverse with your computers, either Windows or Mac. And then really, even I'm very excited that I hope to see you all on the metaverse in the same server. Yeah, so that's about it. It was Christopher Lee talking about the Sandbox, CEO of Metalinpics. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Christopher. Some great insights and sharing, and also videos to match. So thanks for that. If anyone has any questions for Christopher, can you please put them into the chat? We still have a couple of minutes left before we round out our first session tonight. So questions for Christopher, please. Or if you have questions for Eddie or Francesca, just put them in the chat and then we'll look at it. All right, now, whilst we're waiting, a couple things. Comments from anyone here in terms of as we close out our session on Metaverse? So I see here in the chat from Dr. G. He says, Metaverse on the moon. Any thoughts? So Christopher or?
Metaverse on the moon, I think it's a very interesting idea, especially that still a lot of people do not have an access to the spaceship to the moon, that the human beings still haven't really got to the point where we can be really public. But also at the same time, OASA being a part of Hong Kong, that it will be basically a very fast track that we can set up some existence on the moon base. That I think is a very interesting project. And of course, I think different platforms need to be discussed where we will actually build the moon base on which platform.
Okay, thanks, Christopher. And the other one is such as that, why is the Sandbox regarded as the best metaverse? And what could be done in the Sandbox? Because obviously at OASA, we'd like to explore that as well. So thoughts there in terms of the Sandbox, Christopher?
Okay, I think I can explain, I've already explained the second part of what can be done in the Sandbox, so I will mainly focus on why the Sandbox is regarded as a best metaverse. So essentially, if you look at the market right now, the industry is mostly focused on the two different active metaverses, which was already explained by Eddie, the Decentraland and the Sandbox. So the major differences over there is like the design strategy, where the Sandbox is with the voxels, while the Decentraland is more like the curves and more high quality assets. And then if you think about that, even though it's really good looking, it limits a lot of creators to get into the metaverse. If you think about let's say the duration, the period of time you have to spend to pick up anything related to Decentraland, it'll be expected to be a lot longer than the one that you have in the Sandbox. So a couple of things really just act in there. And then also at the same time, I think the Sandbox is one of the best branding agencies out there. Like they're really good at marketing and branding, but you will really have to see what's going to happen in the long term after the Sandbox launches, and we will really see who's the actual winner. And then also at the same time, in the next year, we don't know what kind of project will emerge. I see a lot of projects like Other Side by the Bored Ape Yacht Club and Solis on the Solana network. There are a lot of like high quality metaverses to come. So it will also up to like if the people prefer the blockchain based metaverse or just pure metaverse, like let's say centralized built by Meta or Microsoft, then we'll have to see about it. But currently, I believe it's the design that really matters a lot in the Sandbox.
Great. Thanks very much, Christopher. And let's thank Christopher for sharing his session with us this evening. Now, could I ask, please, just as we wrap up this evening, before we get into announcements, we're going to launch one more poll question. So, Cherry, can you help me launch the last poll question? All right. So basically, as a result of today's sharing in the session today, how do we feel now about the metaverse? Could you please cast your thoughts? Are we expert yet? Or very familiar, fairly familiar, or a little bit? All right, so let's close out the polls, Cherry, and just share a little bit. So it looks like we've moved up in terms of our understanding, and we've gone from earlier, no idea, and a little bit to more dominant of a little bit and fairly familiar. So thank you everyone for your sharing and also for helping us create a better understanding of the metaverse. So just to finish up, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. And also let's give a round of applause to our speakers, Eddie Chow, Francesca Lee, and Christopher Lee. So congratulations and thank you for all your sharing and great insights. And we welcome you back. So what I'd like now to do is call upon our program manager and the person who's really the brains behind the program today, Cherry. So Cherry, can you share a little bit of what's going to happen next month?
Yes, our next talk will be talking about UFOs and Dr. Greg, and I will be moderating the session. So the talk is about UFOs, why do we care? So keep an eye and stay tuned for our next forum in July. Thank you.
So it should be very fascinating. UFOs, it'll be last Thursday at the same time. In fact, we will have as a special speaker a NASA trained astronaut who has firsthand sharing in terms of this fascinating topic as such. So please join us for that.